All right. Well, it is 1:30 on the dot. And as usual, I want to make sure that everybody stays on time here. So, well, thank you for joining us at the Wicked Smart webinar here. If you don't know me, my name is Andy Bonce. I have been hosting these webinars since March of last year. And our goal really, when we started this, is just to kind of bring experts to help kind of talk through some strategies, talk through tools, talk through tactics, what's working, kind of on the street. Because I know from the podcast I listen to, a lot of times the information that the big experts, the big authors, the big speakers, big conferences, they share items that are really custom to big businesses and people with big budgets. And sometimes it's hard to relate from a small business, local business owner. And that's who are the people that we are trying to serve at Midwest Family. So that has been our initiative, starting the Wicked Smart webinar, and with all the content that we look to create as an organization. So my name is Andy Bonce. I'm the marketing director at Midwest Family, and I've been running this show and with all of my team of amazing people around me. So without further ado, I want to introduce our amazing speaker today. He's going to talk about telling stories and how to build your business empire. So I'm really excited about this. I've been talking to Stephen. We had a short phone conversation a couple of weeks ago, kind of teeing it up. One thing that'll be a little bit different this week is it's going to be more like a podcast format. Stephen and I are going to kind of riff a little bit, talk about a lot of different, have more of a discussion. So if you want to add to the discussion, if you have questions or feedback, feel free to interrupt in the chat box. I'll be taking a look at it. Otherwise, Teresa can also interrupt if we're in full riff mode. So some housekeeping information before we get going. You will receive the recording. There will be a few slides, not as many as usual, but I will send a PDF out there with the relevant information. Again, ask questions. Please follow us on social media. We are on YouTube. When you get value out of this today, what I would ask is to go out there, follow us, subscribe, like, share, comment, teach those algorithms who's boss, and help get our content out there to other people, because that's our goal. So if you are on LinkedIn, that the Midwest Family of Companies is where you can find a lot of great information about previous webinars and other great stuff that the team is getting out there into the world. So if you are on Twitter or other social media, please use these branded hashtags if you want to grab a quote or a story or talk about what you've learned today. That would be fantastic. So Stephen here, he's going to talk about building empires, right? Out of local businesses. So these are the kind of topics that we're talking about today, really kind of how to build an emotional bond and with your customers, how to create proven storytelling techniques, and the number one rule that can never be broken when using storytelling to drive sales. So Stephen is the director of the Wizard of Ads in Canada. We've had a lot of them. Stephen was on once before, kind of talking about headlines, I believe, several months ago with one of his partners. And we have him on again. So a repeat guest, lucky us, right? And then at the end, I'll share what our next webinar is going to be and go from there. So I'm going to stop share. We're going to get out of the slide mode here and get this ball rolling. So Stephen, using stories to build an empire. Why did you come up with that as a title? I mean, why is that important? Why is this relevant for the people here today?
Okay, so there's two reasons, and one selfish in terms of building an empire. I have a podcast that I've been doing, which is the Empire Builders Podcast, and what we've been doing with that podcast is taking a look at big businesses, but going back to when they were small, and what did they do to go from small to large? Because I agree with what you're saying. A lot of times we hear this information and it's about, oh, here's what Apple is doing today, or here's what Nike is doing today. That's not applicable to most small businesses because they don't have billion-dollar budgets and all this other stuff. So to me, it's about the aspiration of a business owner is they want their business to become bigger. So part of the title was, this is about building your business empire. And I think stories, and I know, and we've seen success with our customers, using stories as a technique to cut through that clutter, build emotional bonds, and increase the size of your business is a huge opportunity. And I actually think it's a hidden advantage small businesses have, because I think it's easier for them to find these stories and tell these stories than big businesses that would get bogged down with committees and, well, you know, that's a story that's great for Nebraska, but we also got California to worry about, right? So I actually think it's also a hidden asset that small businesses have.
With stories, it seems kind of, I think most people who are in advertising, business owners, I think they would be under the impression that they are telling stories. But I think there's also the difference between an okay story and a great story, right? So, and we had mentioned in that first bullet point, the emotional bond that needs to, that is kind of the difference between good and great, or possibly wasting your advertising dollars and actually making an impact. I mean, what are some key components that you see with the waste of money and actually seeing a result?
Yeah, we got lots of customers come to us say, oh yeah, I'm telling stories. I've got testimonials and we've got case studies and things along that lines. And those things, while they can look like they're a story, they're not really a story. A story has to have, and this may seem really obvious, but it has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Stories also have casts of character. So for example, a lot of case studies are, here's what they did, here's the result, but there's not really much of a conversation around the beginning, other than, oh, they had this problem, did this, here's the result. Or here's the type of customer that we appeal to, that's a story. Well, it's not, because stories are about, especially if we're selling products or services, is how that product or service has changed our customers' lives. They went from this state to this state. They started here, our product or service took them here. That's the story arc. That's beginning where they are, what our product do, where did they land. Show that transition, but even more important, show that transition from an emotional perspective. I went from being hot and sweaty, uncomfortable, unhappy, to cool, comfortable, happy. Now I know happy is not a great description, but you get what I mean, right?
Yeah, I love that. I think that one of the things that Ryan Dice says from Digital Marketer is had a big impact on me as a marketer is the goal of advertising and marketing is to take people from a before state and an after state. And if you I think keeping a simplified messaging framework, or keeping things really simple from a marketer's perspective, is like, okay, let's define what your customer is before they meet you.
Yep.
And let's define what it is after they meet you. And it really helps fill in a lot of gaps. Do you kind of feel that, do you see that light bulb moment when you're working with your customers, that you walk people through that really simple approach to marketing?
Yeah. Well, and one of the most famous storylines out there, and you can read about it if you read the book A Hero with a Thousand Faces, which is written by Joseph Campbell. One of Joseph Campbell's most famous students was the guy who wrote Star Wars, George who wrote Star Wars. And that storyline starts with hero's ordinary life. Now, part of this is, it's not your story, it's the customer story. It's not about you, with one exception, origin stories, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But for the most part, it's about, they're buying from you because of the change that you can make. They're the hero, you are the guide. The hero's journey story starts with meeting them in their ordinary life. Describe their ordinary life, and all of a sudden, that's me. They insert themselves into that story.
So when you're walking, and I think as we walk through this, it starts to make a lot of sense. But I think the theory and then the application is where some people might get stuck. Because one thing I know with working with clients is that it's very easy to kind of get stuck in the bottle and not be able to read their own label, but also talk their own language and get over industry jargon, or just or almost take shortcuts of, because telling stories and having this level of kind of story strategy takes work.
It
And
does.
it takes creative thought. It takes having a little bit more of a plan with it. Like, how do you get people through that?
Well, and I'm going to address that, but I also want to step back for a moment. We can also allow the consumer smarter than we often give them credit for, and we can allow them to imagine parts of the story. And one of my favorite examples of that is something Hemingway did, where, the story goes, he wanted to give somebody an example of the world's shortest story. And it went this way: baby shoes for sale, never worn. Now, as soon as you say that, there's an emotional connection to that. And also our brain immediately makes up a beginning and an end to that story. Baby shoes for sale, never worn. Most of our brain fills in the blanks on that. And those are really powerful when you can get somebody doing it. But the key to all of that is emotion. And I want to step back for a second and talk about why emotion is so important, because I think so much of advertising is taught features, benefits, features, benefits, features, benefits, create that intellectual argument and put it out there. And here's the problem with features and benefits. So as we all know as marketers, repetition is really important. If we want to move something from short-term memory, short-term working memory, into long-term procedural memory, which is, I have this need, this is who I'm going to buy, repetition is required for us to be remembered. I think we can, I'm sure you've had lots of podcasts talking about repetition, and you talk to your customers about repetition. Here's the challenge when you're using an intellectual argument on repetition. In 2008, Professor Smith, Chan, and Yang from the University of Indiana did some really interesting studies. And what they found was intellectually persuasive arguments are kind of like viruses. I know viruses are a bad word right now, but kind of like viruses. We actually develop counter arguments to them. So the more you hear them, the more in our brain we create counter arguments to those intellectual arguments, which means repetition starts to work against us when we're intellectually trying to persuade somebody. The more repetition we hit them with, the more they develop counter arguments to it. Which is the reason why, one of the reasons why we want to use stories and speak to somebody emotionally. Because when we speak to them emotionally, the opposite happens. Repetition makes the emotion stronger. So we get strength when we make an emotional argument. We get weakness over time when we create an intellectual argument. So this is the reason why emotion is so important. And there's a second reason why emotion is important. If you read studies done by these brain doctors and whatnot, what they'll tell you is emotion is the signal. So when we have something happens emotionally, all sorts of chemicals get fired off. The amygdala goes crazy and whatnot. And that actually is a signal to the brain that this is important. Emotions are how the brain sorts important information from non-important information. So over time, emotion strengthens our argument, and emotion says to the brain, hey, dude, this is important, pay attention. So one of the big advantages to stories is the way of injecting emotion into our persuasive argument. Gives us that opportunity to be really creative.
Do you have examples what are some key examples? I think that, if you're an accountant, or if you're a contractor or a window guy, or like, sometimes it's easy to kind of deflect it, like, oh, that'd be easy if you're a this, but I'm a this, What are some examples to kind of solidify?
Yeah, and to set the stage for this one I want to share with you. So I do have one I want to share, but I want to set the stage a little bit. And is trust important? Trust is important. I think we can all accept that trust is important. How do we develop trust with people? Well, the funny thing is, one of the greatest ways to develop trust is by sharing a weakness or a vulnerability. When people, our best friends, our closest friends, the people that we know would die for us, we actually know all their warts. They know all of ours. That's what builds that really strong, trusting bond. And when we share vulnerability, others will share vulnerability back. And that's what creates a lot of trust. So one of the opportunities in storytelling is tell a vulnerable story about yourself. And it can be nothing to do with your business. It could just be a vulnerable story about yourself. And people start going, oh man, I trust that person. I've gotten to know them a little bit better. They're great people. So what I'm going to do is I have one here that that I'm going to share with you guys. And this is one that was written by a partner of mine, Tom Wainick, wrote this ad. So let me share the sound on this. Share sounds, or so sound is sharing, and I'm just going to check this with you guys in a second. Did you hear the sound?
Yep.
All right, awesome. So this is for a small heating and air conditioning company that we've just growing like crazy.
You could just see who I am on the inside. If I could just lay my heart out on the table, I know you'd like me. I've felt this way since I was 7 years old. See, I grew up in a religious household, extremely religious, the kind that requires women to wear long dresses and put their hair up in buns. But oddly enough, I wasn't completely sheltered. Even though I had never seen Star Wars as a child, I attended public school and I beamed with confidence. Still, I looked different than the other kids, and I felt different too. That experience sparked a hunger to be liked and accepted, and to be accepting of others. That's why I've made it my mission in life to make sure that everyone is taken care of, even the underdogs. I'm Christy Featherston of Home Heating and Air Conditioning. If you could see the heart and care we have for our customers, the heart and care we have for you, then you'd know there's no one in Idaho, no one in America who cares more about your family's home, comfort, and safety.
Do you trust her?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But think about how vulnerable she was being there. She shared that she comes from this deeply religious background, didn't see Star Wars. Like, I mean, laid her heart on the table, open to, wow, you're a weirdo, criticism, whatever. But at the end of it, you're like, wow, do I think that she would actually care that a good job happens when her texts come out to my home and that they are going to be honest and trustworthy and all? Absolutely. What did she say about heating and air conditioning? Nothing. What did she say about the product? Nothing. What did she say about her text? Nothing. But all of a sudden we trust her.
Yeah, I agree. I think that most people in advertising, we talk a lot about awareness, and one of the biggest mentors in my marketing career has been John Jantz from Duck Dick Marketing, and he talks about the goal of marketing is to get people to know, like, and trust you before they're ever going to try or buy your services. So,
right.
But how do you do that? And talking about, you had shared a topic of, you have to say trust me without saying trust me.
Right.
And
right.
From an ad like that definitely kind of rings true of like, wow, okay, well, she never said like the most trusted person and in HVAC and all of the whole county, so.
And she didn't even share something that necessarily is the thing that you would think that leads to trust. What I'm saying is it's vulnerability is one of the tools that you can use in storytelling. So she told a vulnerable story about herself. Now, another example, and we've used this a lot with customers over the years, are what we call origin stories. So I have an example of an origin story, and an origin story is why somebody entered the business that they entered, right? Because often we have people who, I became this for these sets of reasons. This is what drew me into this career. And not everyone has a great origin story, but if there is one, it also builds trust, because I now understand your passion for the business. It's not just about money. You have this passion. So here's an example of another one written by, and it'll be a funny accent because this ad comes all the way from Australia. So Craig Arthur, one of our Australian partners, wrote this ad, and this is for a dentist. So again, like you're like, well, I know you didn't say dentist, but I think you could have inserted dentist very easily in the list of I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer, I'm a dentist, right? What could I do? So here's an example.
Really?
Here's an example from Australia for a dentist. So let me get this one shared here. Share. Away we go.
Growing up in Sydney's western suburbs, he was a skinny ethnic kid with crooked teeth and no confidence. Not a good mix.
Luckily, I had a caring family dentist. He explained how he could fix my smile, and he did. Being able to smile with confidence changed my life. He inspired me to become a dentist. I'm Dinesh Singham from Absolutely Dental, and I'd love to help you smile again.
Book your free smile makeover consultation. Call Absolutely Dental. Visit absolutelydental.com.au.
So in this case, he tells a little story about why he became a dentist. He was this skinny kid. And that has become a big campaign. And he's gone from like one small shop to, he now has 3 offices with a pile of chairs. But it's this continual story of different things about how getting his teeth straightened up and this person helping him and all of this, how it changed his life. And all of a sudden you go, wow, you became a dentist because you really believe in the power of dentistry. So, you can share a vulnerability about your life that makes you more trustworthy. You can share this core story of what led you into the business. And that creates trust as well. And both are great stories and both have that emotional component in it.
I love that. I think that one of the things that you had talked about is features and benefits. The one thing that each of the messages you've shared has been common, or in both of them, is an emotional benefit.
Yes.
How does it make people feel? Like what is the after effect of your business on how it makes your customers feel? Does it, does it improve their status? Does it improve what they have? Does it improve their emotional well-being? Does it improve, their perception of who they are and how they define themselves and their impact on their beliefs, and all of those different elements, kind of like the before and after state that you can weave into a marketing message, is where it starts to really kind of connect a lot of dots as you're really structuring all these pieces together.
And the other thing you can do is, let's say, I'm going to share with you another example, and this one's from a jeweler, who has, like, they've got all the top brands. They've got Rolex and all of the top fancy high-end great brands, and are in the best malls and all of that. And what we know is that's great, but it also has a disadvantage because it can make people feel really nervous, right? I think we've all experienced that. Well, I don't know if I want to go into that jewelry store. I don't know where that jewelry store is, whether I'm good enough for it. And so what our goal with this ad is, we wanted to make our guy approachable. So how do you make somebody approachable? Now, this also answers your earlier question. Where do you come up with the ideas? Well, he's a guy who grew up in Detroit and went to school in Boston. And so there's a couple of words that he says a little funny. And we actually had a complaint come in on one of our ads about how he pronounced the word jewelry. We went, there's an ad. There's an ad. So you're talking about, so sometimes it's paying attention for these opportunities. So now you want to sit there and say, well, how do we take that and we make it an ad that makes our guy seem approachable? Well, I'm going to get this one. I'm going to get this one queued up for you, and we're going to share sound again. Share sound, share, and here we go.
I'm Sir Richard Poshingham.
And I'm Mark Tapper from Tapper's Jewelry.
I'm sorry, Mark. Can you say that again?
Tapper's Jewelry?
Bobble that just a bit.
Jewelry.
Still haven't got it. You are familiar with that word, aren't you?
Jewelry. Sounds right to me.
And only you. Still, it's not like it's your area of expertise.
Look, I may not be a professional announcer, but I know one thing for sure. Nobody cares more about helping you find exactly the right jewelry than I do. My father, Howard Tapper, built his life in the jewelry business, and I'm doing my best to live up to his example.
But surely he could at least say it. Howard, would you demonstrate?
Of course, jewelry. Come on, Mark. It's not that hard. Jewelry.
Feeling a bit ganged up on.
You try to bring them up right.
Tappers, tell us your story.
At Tappers, we want to hear how you say jewelry. Straighten me out at tappers.com.
You also say tappers a bit funny.
I give up.
Tappers.
Can we roll the next commercial, please?
How could you not like the guy? Right? On radio, he's allowing his dad to bust his balls about how he says the word in his profession that he grew up in.
Love it.
Right? Is he now more approachable? Totally more approachable. Where did the idea come from? Actually came from a complaint where somebody was making a comment that he was pronouncing it wrong. And we took that idea and turned it completely into an act.
Yeah, I like that approach because sometimes as business owners and marketers, sometimes it can be very challenging to draw the line in the sand. Be like, hey, these are the people that we're serving, and we do this on purpose because we're not going to serve these. We're not going to serve these people, but our message won't attract these people. Like our message will attract these people and repel the best. And I think that strategic approach is a very difficult thing to embrace because you don't want to say no to any business, but without doing so, without having kind of that focused message or those focused stories, or at least a focused approach, and like, hey, this is who our ideal customer is, and these are the type of stories that are going to attract them. I think that particular message in particular, it was a very good example of, we're not going to serve the hoity-toity, audience. We're the blue-collar jeweler.
You got it.
That got me saying it wrong.
You got it.
It's that COVID brain,
Well, and you bring up a good point. And I wish I had some of these other ones to share, but we also got to be cognizant of time here. But one of the things that does also happen when we start hitting these emotional buttons, here's what you got to be ready for. You got to be ready for complaints. Every one of these ads have had complaints. People have complained about them because we want to think that love and hate are opposite ends of a spectrum, and they aren't. Love and hate are opposite sides of the same coin. When you love something, you care about it, you're invested in it, you have an opinion on it. When you hate something, you're invested in it, you care about it, and you have an opinion on it. And so when you start pushing these emotional buttons, you're going to get complaints, but those are going to be from people who aren't part of your tribe. And you can't create love without stirring the pot a little bit and creating a few haters out there. But here's also something I want to point out. All these ads are creative, and sometimes creativity scares people, especially professional services, where they go, Andy, have you ever heard this? Well, gee, I don't know, Andy, that's not professional, right? Have you ever heard that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's something I want to share with you, and it comes from this book, The Case for Creativity, written by James Herman, and it's on page 158 if you want to read the whole study. And basically, here's what they say. And this comes from a study done by McKinsey & Company. So this is a bunch of accountants, right? McKinsey & Company is a bunch of accountants. They're business consultants, but primarily accountants. And here's what they found. The more creative a campaign, the more likely a product will sell. The more creative a campaign, the more likely a product will sell. Here's the other thing that they found, because I'm going to read some of these things out to you here, is that and this is comparing campaigns that are, when a campaign is more creative, what they found was that 69% of people feel the product was more valuable. 83% believe it's of higher quality. 88% it's more likely worth purchasing. there's a full study there where you read through it, and basically all of these things that we want to be seen as are more likely to happen when we actually put a creative campaign in front of somebody that has nothing to do with the product or service that we're selling. So you know what? If you actually want to be seen as being a professional, who cares? Better product, services. Oh yeah, and the other thing was a better problem solver. Do creative ads. It's been proven by McKinsey and Company. Don't listen to me, listen to the accountants.
Love that. So one thing that because I'm a marketing nerd, so, and
Love it.
one of the things that marketers love are these things called funnels, right? Like how we love talking about funnels, the process of taking strangers and turning them to customers, all that stuff. But one thing I see marketers messing up is their ability to take, you and I had this conversation about brandable chunks. So I want to spend, a little bit of time here today. We have about maybe 10 minutes or so to kind of talk about how does one, because now your business owners are drawn to every different tool and tactic. They need to be on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and on traditional media and email. And how do stories and this type of approach, because I think it makes sense. We've seen examples of more audio commercials, right? That could be a video, that could be radio, that could be a podcast. It doesn't really matter. It's audio. But how does this all weave together from a complete kind of omnipresent look at me throwing jargon at you.
Omnipresent multi-channel marketing campaign. Yeah,
I'm such a fancy marketer. It's fabulous. It's fabulous.
So in other words, to be your universal translator, how do I use this all over the place?
Yeah. Sometimes I find myself being too fancy, but thanks, Stephen. I appreciate it.
There you go. All right. Now, just remind, the one thing is, cut me off. We need to, because I want to make sure that we talk about the one simple rule that can never be broken.
Yep.
But so in the Wizard of Ads world, we call this idea brandable chunks, and people confuse brandable chunks with slogans. Brandable chunks are something that fits into the ad. A slogan, something is slam on the bottom. That's part of the conversation that happens in the ad. And I've got an example I'm going to share with you that's some print ads that were done by Canada Club back a long time ago. And part of these ads were to fight this perception that Canada Club was not cool because Canada Club was drunk by your dad. So they looked at it and they said, you know what's the older demographic? We're trying to appeal to the young. So here's what and being a dad, I love it, because what they did is they made your dad seem cool. So these ads really appeal to me, right? They may not appeal to anybody else. Any dads out there, you're going to love these ads. That's all I'm going to say. But here, let me, so here was a print ad. Your dad never used a bridge. He didn't wheel his luggage, drive an automatic, or drink anything rimmed with sugar. He drank whiskey cocktails made with Canada Club in rock glass. And if there was a queue around, he didn't have to pay for them. Damn right, your dad drank it. Now, in this case, what's brilliant is they leaned into it. Now, the things that are marked in red, brandable chunks. Those are ideas that can be used over and over again in campaigns. So for example, your dad was not a metrosexual. He didn't do Pilates, moisturize, or drink pink cocktails. Your dad drank whiskey cocktails made with Canada Club, served in rock glass, right? We've heard this already. They tasted good. They were effortless, right? So some of these ideas we've heard. Your grandpa didn't approve of your dad, right? He had a reputation. He broke a few hearts. He drank CNC and gingers. They were smooth. They were mixed really well. Those are phrases that you could use again. Just like him, eventually grandma came around. Damn right, your dad drank it. Right? Your mom wasn't your dad's first. He went out, he got two numbers in the same night. He drank cocktails. We've heard that before. But they were whiskey cocktails. We've heard that before. Made with Canada Club, served in a rock glass. They tasted good. They were effortless. Damn right, your dad drank it. So So all of these ads were slightly different ads of the portrayal of dad, but you could see that there were common phrases that could be used again, right? He drank cocktails, but they were whiskey cocktails served in a rock glass. Now, you don't use a brandable chunk each time. So if you noticed, the brandable chunks didn't appear in each ad. So you have 6 or 8. You don't use them every ad, but you can put them in here and there, and that creates that emotional anchor and that repetition in somebody's mind.
Yeah, I love that. I think that the line in the sand is very, very evident in these ads. And if you haven't picked that up, you're not listening. I think that they're okay with turning some people off with these ads because they know who their stories are going to speak to, and they're okay with pissing a few people off in the process.
You think they got a couple of complaints on this one? For sure. But you got to choose who you're going to lose. You can't please both sides of the fence. And here's the beauty, and this is the reason why this is harder for large corporations. Large corporations have to grow their business, and to grow their business, they have to appeal it to as many people as possible. If you're a small business, and I can sit there and go, here's a campaign that I can guarantee will get you 25% of the consumers in your neighborhood and turn off 75%, you're going to be like, oh, sign me up. I become really super successful with 25% of the market. McDonald's can't do that. McDonald's needs 75% of the market. You as a small business owner don't. So this is way easier and way more powerful for small businesses. And the funny thing though, is if you go back to the origin of these big businesses when they were small, these are the types of things that they did. They didn't do easy when they were small. That's what got them going.
Yeah, I love this approach. And for those of you that didn't catch our last Wicked Smart webinar, this is right in the same sequence of events. So you should go back and catch that for sure. But before, we have about, I don't know, probably about 5 minutes to discuss the number one rule you can't break. So I don't want us to not go there.
And I'm going to share one quick thing. If you're wanting to do education, the best story to use is a parable story. The absolute best example you can find is there's a Wall Street Journal ad, and it's called The Two Men. Look it up on the internet. This ad sold $1 billion worth of subscriptions, and it's a great example of a parable story. As soon as you see it, you're going to go, oh my God, that's a parable story. It's a great example. But the rule that cannot be broken, when you're deciding to do an emotional ad, pick the emotion you're trying to convey. The emotion might be trust, the emotion might be fun, the emotion might be whatever it is. Pick that emotion. If you have to say the word or any variation of the word, so you can't get out of this with a thesaurus, you can't go, well, instead of fun, I'm going to call it, exciting. No, if you have to say the word in your ad, you've lost. As soon as I can say, but come on, we're trustworthy, I've undone all the work I did in a trust building ad. If I say we're the fun place, I've undone all of the work. It has to feel fun. It has to feel trustworthy. Your audience has to feel it. If you have to tell them, and if you feel you got to tell them for them to get it, you've lost. You've absolutely lost the battle. That's the rule that cannot be broken. And that's the test. Will somebody feel this? Do I have to tell them what I'm trying to get them to feel? Then you haven't hit the mark.
I wonder if it's like the eye roll test as a dad. You're like, I'm the fun dad. And all of your kids are like,
yeah, exactly. And if you want to just read a great story, that is a fantastic example of this, is go to Hemingway's short story, Hills Like White Elephants. And when you read that story, ask yourself the question at the end of it, write it down. What were the two people talking about? And I'm not going to tell you what they're talking about, but I've seen this done in classes and everybody agrees what it is. Write it down and then go back and look for the clues that tell you that's what they're talking about. And what you'll find is there are none. Now, Hemingway is like I mean, one of the world's greatest writers, but it's a great example of getting somebody to feel something without telling them what to feel. And even in this case, what the conversation is about. Because it's only after you go back trying to look for the clues, you realize, oh my God, he never once said that, but I know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
So it's a great example.
I love that. One practice that I've found helpful that I've walked with clients, and even like when I'm building the marketing plans I'm working on, is the before and after state. So we only have about 5 minutes left, but I'm a very tactical application guy, because you can walk away from this and have a bunch of knowledge and feel good about it, then you'll forget about it tomorrow. But if you actually take action on this stuff, on the before and after emotional state, I think that's important. Like, what do they have before your service? What do they feel? What is their status like? What are some other things that, when you're mapping that out, Stephen, that, the before and after emotional states, that, if they were to take action in their business to write this down right now, what would you say would be, something that they could really walk away with, something tangible?
Well, but I think you've nailed it. It is that before and after. It is that before and after state. But when we go back to the beginning, said there's a story has a beginning, a middle, and the end. So the transformational is the end, right? And there's the before state. But one of the things that you can do to really establish this as a story is give little details about the before state. So if somebody goes and listens to my podcast, the Empire Builders podcast, this is all what they'll hear. If you listen at the beginning, I always give a couple of details about the business at the beginning that are really not significant. This was formed by John David Power sitting over his table with his wife, and they were talking about such and such. Does that matter to the story that I'm telling? No, it doesn't. But it establishes a beginning point where now you can picture it's this guy in his kitchen doing something. So now that allows me to tell the transformational state. What I find that most people miss is they don't establish that beginning thing, because they go, well, it doesn't really matter that he's 45 years old and lives at 3 Drury Lane. But it does, because that establishes a mental picture of the beginning. Awesome. Even if it's not important that he's at 3 Drury Lane for the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been a big push of mine recently. I'm excited about some of the stuff that we're working on, as every story has a beginning, middle, and end, and a hero and a guide. And
a hero and a guide, and we are the guide. The customer is the hero.
Absolutely. Well, we only have 3 minutes left, and I have really enjoyed this, Stephen. So I really appreciate you jumping on and sharing your wisdom and sharing your stories, of course, and the story framework. Sometimes marketing can be marketing today, with all the tools and technology and everything changing so fast, and 7 different people telling you what the best next tactic to do is, it's easy to lose what actually works. And it's also easy to lose, like, how do you impact another human? And stories have been impacting humans since, days of the caveman. And I think it helps simplify it a lot. So I really appreciate this insight. And there's been kind of a series here, which hasn't been on purpose, but maybe I'll pretend that I did this on purpose. But as we continue from last Wicked Smart webinar to this one, our next one is we're bringing on Mike Slover. He's a strategy wizard.
Mike's awesome. Mike is awesome. Yeah.
How to create your most profitable marketing message. And here, what he's going to cover is kind of the opportunity to learn how to grow your business without any gimmicks. You'll learn techniques like Henry Ford used to revolutionize your business and revolutionize your industry. And if you come and your competitors don't, you might get yourself a little bit of a leg up. So Mike's the author of a book that it's lost on me right now. I had COVID last week, so my brain's a little bit foggy, but it's how to have a bonking good business, I believe. But he is an author, and it's on Amazon, so you can go check it out yourself. Mike Slover. He's also the CEO of the Strategy Wizard Marketing. if you have any questions or want to reach out, please give email Teresa Tim. Also, if you're a podcast person, go ahead and check out Steven's make sure you do the Empire Builders. The is important. I tried to find it myself, and you have to have the Empire Builders podcast. They're really short. They're anywhere from 8 to 12 minutes long from the several that I've listened to, and he practices what he preaches. So I appreciate you being here, Stephen, and I appreciate everyone that joined with us today, and look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.